But today I want to do two things. First of all, I want to finalize the data transformation part of the ETL, which is something you hopefully do part of it at least partially for your project. Once that's done, we will also talk a little bit about BI project management and project team. Some of the more administrative topics related to implementing a BI project. Does it sound good? Does everybody have Pentaho software by now? You all have it installed? It's running no problem? Okay. All right, so let me switch my screen. Share it again. Okay, so when it comes to extraction, once extraction is done, we're talking about transformation today. There is always a case where when you bring data from multiple systems, there's usually a ton of cleaning that's required to be done. And the reasons for that is that when you bring data from multiple sources or from multiple software that have been developed by multiple vendors, the standards for generating and storing data will be different. And that is, I would say, 99% of case. Any case I've seen where, for instance, we have SAP, we have ERP software from SAP, we also have a CRM that's coming from Salesforce. When you try to merge this data, there's going to be a lot of issues. Data will not be clean. These are like some simple examples. Let's say we have a date that's in one software would be 13th of July, the other one would be in this format, and you actually want them both transformed to a different format. You want to say like 07, let's say -13 -2020. There always is the case where there's duplicate entries. Let's say we have customer lists, some of the customers have been entered multiple times, or their information have changed over time and our data is not consistent. So cleaning basically starts actually partially during the extraction. When we were extracting data, if you guys remember the way we were extracting data, as you extract data, you can actually right there, you can start renaming some of the fields. You can start specifying the metadata. If you done the ETL assignment that was due yesterday, you have looked at some of this metadata information that's there. So that actually is a part of data cleaning. But for the sake of some presentation today, we're going to go through a couple of other, let's say, more relevant tasks that we do when we get data from these different sources. It is very common, for instance, when we get data, when we have our customers, let's say we have our clients, provided a lot of textual information, it's possible that there's a lot of inconsistency. Let's say we ask for country. Some people have put United States, some people have to put US, some people put US of A. It all refers to the same thing. But if you're running analysis on this data, you might have some inaccurate information because there's different input for this. So there's first thing you want to do is always want to make sure that you basically clean information that refers to the same thing. So we'll talk about that. There is another thing that's also common. You might have seen it when you're working with BigQuery data. There's some special characters that will be generated when a program provides an output. Let's say you have date information. At the end of date, there might be one space, or there might be a special character. And that special character actually make that field not be consistent in a way that you want. For instance, if it's a field date, but there is a character in it at the beginning or at the end, you can't easily turn that into the date format. You can't really transform it easily. So there's all these special characters that you need to clean. So we'll talk about how to clean that. There is a lot of manual entry input problems. Let's say you ask for your customers to write down the name of the states. And instead of California, they have provided some typos, or you ask for New York. Some people have a space between New York, some people might not. Some people write or like NYC instead, or NY. These are all referring to the same thing, or there were sometimes there's some mistakes that can be fixed using what's known as the fuzzy match. We'll talk about fuzzy match. Another common issue, which also is relevant to your project, is when we are calculating a formula. Let's say you all have KPI, right? KPI sometimes is a formula. Let's say the formula to calculate performance of each of our sales agent. It's like the number of products they sold, number of customers they reached, this and that. You have a formula. How do we calculate the formula? There are two ways to do it. One is the function called calculate. The other one's called function formula. We'll cover that quick. And also, we need to sometimes change format. Let's say we have date in this format, or we need to change it to this format, right? A dash instead of a slash. Or you want to, let's say you have some data, but you only are interested in certain columns in your analysis. So you want to drop some columns. All of those can be done using a select value. Okay. Now, first, okay, so let me actually go through this example. You can do this on your end. And you, let me see this comment here from Valerie. Good, go data studio. That's true. Yep, we're gonna use data studio too. It's easy to build dashboards. I think we will have time to spend 1 or 2 sessions on dashboards. I want to show you guys how that works. Okay, so I'm gonna switch to my laptop. Let me see if I can share screen, and then we'll do these one by one. I'll show you how this works. You can do them on your end. So share screen. Okay. I can probably. Okay, so all of us. Can you guys see my screen? Okay. Do you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So up until this part, which is what we did last class. So I'm just gonna copy these and create a new transformation and just paste them. Hopefully that works. Paste. Again. Some of these are right. Let me save and close my software. Again. 1 second. Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to use that part. That I also post. By the way, I posted the solution for this part on Pentaho files in Blackbird. So, and there I did upload a few new files. Maybe you guys can go check that out. There's a couple of new files in Pentaho folder on Blackbird. So let me just delete this. We can just run this again. Delete that. That would be good. Okay. So we had this part from before, right? So let me just run this, make sure it works. So we have our data, it's sorted on customer name, that looks good. Next thing we wanted to do, first we wanna remove some duplicates. So we have different streams of data. It's common that we have some duplicates when we run an analysis. So in order to remove duplicates, you go to this. You search for this here. Okay, you search for rows, and in transform you have unique rows. Okay, unique rows basically let you get rid of duplicates. But what you need to do is you need to specify what kind of field you want to use in order to identify duplicates. And what's important is that before running a unique row, you always need to make sure your data is sorted, because unique rows basically checks the fields that are coming in a consecutive format. So in this example, I want this to check the customer ID and remove if there's any value in that. So it says if the incoming data, you see, you get a notice. If the incoming data is not sorted, it might not work. So we recommend sorting data, which I already have done. I'm gonna run this, just preview it. And you see that if you're sorted there should be no duplicates in this. And I think there was a couple of rows. I can just look into, we talked about this matrix thing right here. So in the unique rows, oh, actually I did have no rows that were duplicate. But if there was any, it would have been removed at this point, right? So now our data set has 800 unique rows. Next thing we wanted to do, let me go back to my slides. We said, what's this? Okay. Okay. The first thing we wanted to do, let's say we wanted to fix some values in our data set that refer to basically the same thing. What am I talking about? Let's look at our data set again. Well, I can just preview it here. If you look at your data, if I'm looking at country, it looks like people have wrote different things for United States. You see, these are all the same things, right? But different names have been used for United States. So how do we fix this? The way to fix this is actually through the function called value mapper. So how do we fix that? So we search for value or mapper, actually. Mapper would be easier. In the transformation, there's the value mapper. You see that? We'll just drop that here. Then let me connect these first. The reason why you need to connect is when you connect, the fields that are in unique rows will automatically be visible in value mapper. That's why you want to always connect the steps before you're doing any edits. Okay, so we have value mapper. The field name you want to use is, we're looking at country. It says, do you want to, if you leave this empty, it says target field name. Where do you want to write this data? If you leave it empty, it will overwrite that field. If you put anything here, it will create a new field. I can just create a new field so if I see what I'm talking about. We'll just say new country field. Now in the source value and target value, you want to say what's the source and what's the target. Let's say I want everything to be said US. So if it's USA, make it US. If it's United States, make it US. And if it's, I think there's also United States of America in our data. If there's any of these fields, these all refer to US in our data set. So we want to make sure that we get one value. So you press OK, check it on your end. I can just preview again here. And I see that now if I look at, there's a new field. It's called new country. There's some null values. I need to look into these, why there's some null. But then most of them are turned into US, right? There's no other United States. There's no United States of America. Those are all gone. So any value we wanted is now fixed. So that was the first thing we wanted to do. So if we have any field that refers to the same thing, but their different values have been used, you can use value mapper. Next, let's say there might be some special characters in our data. Again, when we extract data, it's very common that maybe some integers will be turned into a string because there's some characters in it. How do we fix that? I can just show you an example of in our data set. So in our data set, I manually entered some hashtags before the name of a few cities. Let's say this was a mistake. Let's say this is something that the data generated. How do we fix this? We go to transform again. We look for something called string, replace in a string in transform. I do replace in a string, I drag and drop it, I connect them again. So I know that in, where was it? Which field was it? City, right? I know that in the city, there are some hashtag values. So there are multiple options. You can use a regex, which is very powerful. If you know Python, you know how regex work. This one is simple. So I just say search for hashtag in that column and replace it with what? In my case, I don't want to replace it with anything. If you need to replace it with anything else, you can just set that in. You can also use the whole word. You can check if you need case sensitive. There's a ton of other options in here. But for me, I think that will do the job. So just say, okay, I am going to run it again. And I should have a list of cities now. Let me just sort this. Cities with no hashtags, right? So the hashtags are gone. Okay. All right. So there are three other things I want you to know when transforming data. So let's talk about those three things. So one was when you get data from, a source, it is common that there are some typos provided by clients, customers, whoever who is putting that information, especially when that's put in manually. Example would be we're looking for state, you were looking for California, but there might be spelling errors, right? Looking for Texas, an A is missing, or people put double S. So there are ways to fix this using something known as fuzzy match. So the way fuzzy match work is you basically measure the closeness of a value to a source value that you provide to your ETL. And through an algorithm, the software will look for the closest match. Let's say we have California, and sub L you have K. So it will look, compare this value to some lookup values, and whatever that's the closest, it will be picked as the choice. This is a common approach, especially when we do data mining. If you guys are familiar with some machine learning, there's a ton of algorithms in machine learning that will do that for us. That can be done also in ETL very easily in Pentaho. The way to do this is we search for fuzzy match. And once you have fuzzy match, I'm going to connect this. Let's look at how to set this up. So if you look at this, there are some lookup steps. So first thing we have to say is you have to specify the lookup steps. The lookup values are in a separate file. that I uploaded on their Blackboard. You have to go to Blackboard, you have to go to Documents, you have to go to Pentaho files. The lookup files are called lookup for states. So download that file on your end. Go back to the software, you bring that file to, and it's an Excel file. So I'm just gonna do an Excel input quickly here. So I'm gonna connect these two. I'm gonna set this up. So we've done this before, so you guys know how this works. It's quick. It's called lookup value. States. Add it. You go to the sheet. You get the sheet name. You bring the sheet in. Okay. That must be easy for you. So now go back to fuzzy match. And lookup steps now, it should show me two inputs. So my input is from this. So those are my lookup values. What are the fields I'm looking for? The field I'm looking for, I should have brought in the fields too. So get the fields. There's one field that's called, we can just preview data too actually. So it's one file with the name of the states, right? That can be used as a lookup value. This could be customer list. You want to, for instance, fix if there's any misspelling in like customers' names. Same process. So I press OK, go fuzzy match. I bring state name. So look for state name, match it with state. This is the algorithms I was talking about. There's multiple algorithms. Discussing these are kind of out of this class, but if you guys are interested, you can look at these. I always actually go with Levenstein. Levenstein is, it's common. We use it, I've used it in machine learning. It's basically the one way to like calculate the similarity, and you can calculate the score. So the minimal value and the maximum. You can just leave it at 1. I'm just going to give it 10. It doesn't matter really. It's basically the value that shows the closeness between two values. I go to the field. Because we just have 2 fields, it's fine. If we wanted to match multiple fields in one fuzzy match, we could do it here, but this should be good. So I'm just gonna look at the output of this step. And if you look at the output of this step, you see that there are a few new fields that are generated. You have the state, right? Now you have a match. You have a field that's called match. And you have what's known as a measure value. A measure value is basically a number that shows the closeness between the match and the original source value and the result of that, which is like the statement. So if we want to see, for instance, what was the issue here, I can just sort the measure values. We said between 1 and 10. So these are the values that there were some misspelling. So it was RW exhaust to change to Texas. So that looks like some spelling error. This changed to California, 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 Florida, Florida. So all the misspelling values are now correct, right? So there were some misspelling issues that are not correct. So that's what you can do through fuzzy match. Another important thing actually I want you guys to know is that this function called select value. Select value is very powerful. You can think of it in its essence. It's like a select a statement in SQL. So it actually lets you filter, select the columns that you want. But beside that, it does more. It has 3 tabs. You can select and alter. It's similar to SQL, right? Question 4 of the assignment. The second thing is you can remove any column that's unnecessary. Let's say you have some columns, you don't want them anymore in your data. You can remove it, or more importantly, if you need to change the name of some fields, or you want to change some type, you want to change anything related to metadata, you can use a select value. Let's go back to PDI. Let's do one example of this. I'm actually going to bring I'm gonna remove this from here. I'm gonna first do some select and then connect that to fuzzy map. So I'm gonna connect, replace to select, and then connect this to fuzzy. Okay. So let's look at this. Let's say we had data that was coming in. You can check the fields. I want to remove one of these fields. Let's say the field segment, I no longer need it, or you can actually change the format, or you want to rename something. Same thing with metadata. So in this example, I want to remove the field segment. For whatever reason, it's no longer necessary after this. You just press OK. I can preview data now. If I preview data, there should be no segment in it. That didn't run. Let me disable this one. It's just not interfere. It might have removed. Sorry. Couldn't find field segment. Yeah, because already I think it removed the value. It can't find it, so I can't run it again. Let me edit this. Let's do something else. Instead of removing, so that's the thing. Once you remove it once, you can't remove it twice, right? So not tricky. I can just remove that. I want to change the city to, or like the region. I want to rename it to, let's say, county. Which is not what you want to do, but let's just to present these results. So I can just preview this again. Let's see that there's the text of the transformation is finished. Select value. I think I should have done it in. Sorry, yeah, this is not correct. Change. Set. Oh, because we removed region. Sorry. So let's just say another one. Just change city to county, which is again something you don't want to do, but works. Let's see if this one works. Okay, so that is now, yeah, so that name is different, right? So you don't actually want to do this because these are cities, but just to show you how it works. Select is very, very useful. I use it all the time, not just with Pentaho, with other software that I use. Select is very powerful. Last thing to work on your end is this one, calculate or formula. In many cases I mentioned, you need to calculate the formula, right? KPI, performance measure, revenue, profit. How do we do it in ETL? We have sales, let's say data that's coming in. Go back to this. I'm just going to delete. There are two ways to do it. One is through calculator. So you can search for a calculator and it will come. You drag it here, or you can search for formula. The difference is calculator is easy to use. There's a lot of pre-default in the software that you can use. So if your calculation is simple and it could be part of these, even including extracting day of the year, some of the things you could do, that's fine. And you can do them with a click of a button. It's easy. Rounding numbers, calculating a standard deviation, A plus B times C. If it's that easy, you can literally use calculation. Let's just say A plus B. And field A is you identify field A, you identify field B, you see what would be that new field you're creating, and once you press OK, it will create that field, right? Very easy to do. If your calculation is not that simple, you go through what's known as formula. What's formula? In formula, you can actually do some more sophisticated. So what's the name of the new field? I just call this revenue. Once you click on that, another window will open. And here you see a ton of more maybe sophisticated transformations with your data. So you can use all of these here. If you want to know the details of them, you can see examples. All the syntax is there. So it's very easy to use. And they work with like dates, with integers, with strings. In this example, I just wanted to calculate a revenue column based on sales. So any column you want to use, you have to put it in bracket. If it's not in bracket, I should get an error. So it says it's an error. So if are you using a name of any of the columns in your data, use that. So I say sales is equal to sales times 1 minus discount. So I want to know actually how much the product was sold for. Just press OK. You identify these values, press OK. You can preview data. I probably should delete this if I want to get data. But basically, anything you want to get, you can calculate the results. So I have a revenue data. So now I have a new column called revenue, right? I don't know if the calculation actually makes any sense. I just want to show you one example.